The sun rose over the great Xuan nation, shining on the many rooftops of Xuanjing. In the Grand Tutor's manor, the buildings stood tall and quiet under the morning light. Inside the manor, the Grand Tutor sat on his seat with a calm face. A woman in a red dress stood beside him, holding a cup of wine. She smiled softly and asked him to drink. Another young woman knelt in front of him, holding a plate of grapes. She also looked up at him and gently asked him to drink. Both women waited for the Grand Tutor as they offered him wine with respectful smiles. A large hall was filled with rows of people kneeling on the red carpet. They bowed deeply toward the front and shouted together, wishing the Grand Tutor a happy birthday. The Grand Tutor stood before them, looking over the hall. He thought about his life and said that in the past 50 years he had risen from having nothing to becoming the Grand Tutor of the nation. Later, he sat as someone poured wine for him. He lifted the cup proudly and thought that his power now overshadowed the whole world. He believed that the story of his life was so great that it could fill a multi-million-word novel. He remembered when he, Li Fan, first arrived in this world. He was only a poor scholar who struggled to survive. He carried his books on his back and walked through a small village filled with simple houses and quiet paths. Back in the present, the Grand Tutor lifted his cup with pride. He looked at his life and thought that a life like his was already perfect. Music filled the hall as dancers in elegant clothes moved gracefully. The Grand Tutor sat high on his throne, while people around him enjoyed food, wine, and the lively celebration. He looked at everything before him and felt that there was nothing more one could ask for. But just when he was admiring his life, suddenly a man rushed inside the hall and called out to the Grand Tutor. He shouted that fire was falling from the sky, calling it a divine sign and an auspicious omen. Another person said that the glowing object seemed to be flying straight toward the Grand Tutor's manor. The Grand Tutor looked up with a serious expression while the women beside him watched the bright light in the distance with shock and confusion. The Grand Tutor stepped outside and stood on the balcony. Sparks of falling light drifted through the air. He looked up and whispered in shock, trying to understand what he was seeing. High in the sky, two powerful figures were clashing, one surrounded by golden light, the other wrapped in swirling purple energy. Just then, one of them shouted angrily at another man named Dao Xuanzi, telling him not to push him too far. As the two figures battled inside a huge whirlpool of light, the Grand Tutor's eyes widened. He finally recognized what they were. He pointed upward and stuttered, calling them cultivators. People inside the hall fell to their knees in panic and excitement. One person cried out that an immortal master had appeared. Another said it was a great omen. Everyone looked up at the sky, overwhelmed by fear and awe. The Grand Tutor stared upward with wide eyes. His expression changed from pride to disbelief. In his mind he wondered how something like this could happen. High in the sky, the man in white shouted angrily at the other cultivator. He asked Ko Hong if he really thought he could escape by fleeing to the land of immortal extinction. He demanded that Ko Hong hand over the cultivation method he obtained that day, saying their fight would only end when one of them died. Ko Hong, surrounded by golden flames, shouted back. He said it was ridiculous to ask for the method. He explained that he had been stuck at the foundation establishment stage for nearly 100 years because he lacked a core formation method. He clenched his fists and continued. His lifespan was almost over, and he was close to turning to dust. Now that he had finally obtained a core formation method, he said there was no way he would ever hand it over to someone else. The man in white spoke calmly but firmly. He said that the Golden Core Tao was a path walked alone. Even though many core formation methods existed, countless cultivators were still stuck at the foundation establishment stage. His expression hardened as he continued. With the path to longevity right in front of him, he said there was no way he would let Ko Hong escape. Ko Hong, wrapped in golden flames, let out a bitter laugh. He looked up at his opponent and said it was ridiculous. They had been brothers for 100 years, yet now they were fighting each other just for a small chance to survive. Ko Hong looked at his opponent and admitted that he was no match for him. He said it seemed he would not be able to escape his fate today. Golden flames swirled around him as he continued speaking. He pointed out that there were many mortals living in this place. Then he asked if his enemy could withstand such a dense concentration of the immortal mortal miasma that surrounded them. Dao Xuanzi raised his glowing sword, surrounded by purple energy. He called out Ko Hong's name loudly as power gathered around him. He pointed the blade forward with a sharp glare. As the energy surged, he demanded to know what Ko Hong was trying to do. The sword shone brighter, and purple light wrapped around it as he prepared to strike. Ko Hong stood inside the giant golden dragon, formed from his flames. He looked down at his opponent and shouted that if Dao Xuanzi couldn't endure the power of the immortal miasma, then he might still have a chance to survive. The golden dragon roared as it rushed forward, while purple energy spiraled around Dao Xuanzi, who held his glowing sword tightly. The two forces finally collided. A burst of golden flames and purple energy exploded in the sky as their attacks struck each other with full power. The impact sent a violent shockwave downward. In the next moment, a massive explosion hit the ground, tearing apart stone and earth. Fire and debris flew in all directions as the area below was completely destroyed by the clash. The people inside the building stared in shock as the explosion echoed outside. Their eyes widened, and they froze where they stood, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Grand Tutor at the front clenched his teeth, his face twisted with anger as he shouted in frustration. A moment later, the blast wave reached him, and everything shook violently. He was thrown back into the rubble as the ground collapsed around him. Dust and broken stones covered the area. The Grand Tutor groaned softly, struggling to rise while the ruins crumbled beneath him. Li Fan lay in the rubble, coughing heavily as dust rose around him. He pressed a hand to his chest, trying to steady himself. As he looked down, his eyes widened in fear. He saw the bodies of his wife and children lying broken and covered in blood among the collapsed stones. His voice trembled as he coughed again, calling out for them in panic. Flames spread across the ruins, and smoke filled the air. The old man slowly stood up, still coughing, and looked over the destroyed courtyard. Bodies lay scattered everywhere, and the fire continued to burn through what was left of his home. The city of Xuanjing, once bright and full of life, was now drowned in flames. Fire spread in every direction, turning everything into a scene of blood and destruction. Wherever the eye looked, there were only broken bodies and collapsed buildings. The smoke rose high, and the air was filled with falling sparks. Li Fan stood in the middle of the ruins, staring at the burning remains of his home. After such a disaster, he knew almost no one had survived. Not even 1 out of 100 citizens was likely left alive. He sank to the ground, holding his injured body as the flames reflected in his eyes. He said that all of this, every part of this tragedy, was caused by the 2 cultivators who suddenly appeared. Li Fan lay on the ground, weak and covered in dust. His breath shook as he tried to speak, and a small sound escaped his lips. Then he suddenly began to laugh. His laughter echoed through the ruined streets as tears mixed with the dirt on his face. He clutched his head and kept laughing bitterly while staring at the broken sky above him. In despair, he asked how cultivators could exist in this world at all. From the moment he became an official, he used all the power he had to search for any sign of the immortal path. He sent ships across the seas and traveled to distant places. After he rose to the position of imperial tutor, standing above all others, he searched the entire world even more fiercely. His men crossed snowy mountains, deep forests, and frozen lands. They went north to the frozen sea, south to the great ocean, east to the ruinous abyss, and west to the linked mountains. But no matter how far they went, they found nothing. In all of Great Xuan, not a single trace proved that immortals truly existed. Li Fan stared ahead with wide, trembling eyes. He said he had already given up long ago. He had grown old, and his hope for the immortal path had disappeared with time. But now, looking at the destruction around him, his mind shook. He wondered if those 2 people he saw earlier were actually immortals. And if they were, he questioned where such immortals could have come from. As the sky trembled, he felt as if fate was mocking him. Lightning wrapped around his body as he raised his hand and activated his power. Bright blue symbols flowed around him while he shouted the name of his treasure, Huanzhen. A glowing sphere formed above him as light burst in all directions. Words echoed within the light saying that when the true becomes false, the false becomes true. The energy continued to gather until it reached its peak. The sphere announced that charging was complete. It asked if it should virtualize the current scenario and return to the initial anchor point. Li Fan then explained what Huanzhen truly was. He said it was the name he had given to his unique treasure. Its purpose was to turn truth into illusion, and reality into virtuality. It could take everything he had experienced and convert it into a simulated world, letting him return to a chosen moment, specifically the moment he first transmigrated into this world. In fact, this was already his second life since transmigrating into the Great Xuan Nation. In his first life, even though he had big dreams, he was just an ordinary man. He wanted to become the top scholar, but he failed the exams again and again. After turning 30, he finally gave up on becoming an official and opened a small business instead. His life slowly became peaceful. He worked hard, earned money, and eventually became a wealthy family head. He got married, had children, and lived an ordinary but happy life. Years passed, and he grew old. It was only when he was on his deathbed that his unique treasure, Huanzhen, awakened for the first time. That awakening became the reason for his unstoppable rise in his second life. After the Huanzhen system finished charging, it gave him the ability to restart his life and return to a chosen point to begin again. But he also said he couldn't restart yet. There were still important things he needed to finish in this life. A few days later, inside the tent, Li Fan sat at his desk, writing commands on a long scroll. His expression was calm but serious. A guard stood beside him, waiting for orders. Li Fan told the guard to send out his command. He ordered the garrison camp outside the city to rush to Xuanjing and maintain order after the disaster. The guard bowed and answered respectfully. Most of Xuanjing's buildings had been destroyed. He planned that once his trusted garrison camp took control of the city, they could speed up the rebuilding after the disaster. More importantly, he could stay in the barracks, oversee the cleanup, and quietly send people to search for the two mysterious cultivators. 1 month later, the ruined city slowly began to show signs of life again. Streets that were once empty started filling with people. Several months later, Xuanjing finally began to recover a proper sense of normal life, as if the disaster had only been a distant memory. Just then, a hooded man knelt on the floor and gave his report to Li Fan. He said there was still no news about the two cultivators. Li Fan, now standing with his back turned, listened quietly. His expression remained calm, but he muttered that he shouldn't have gotten his hopes up about this. He looked up at the light above him. He thought that he had nothing left to hold on to in this life. He raised his hand and called out the name of his treasure, Huanzhen. Bright blue light burst out from his chest and wrapped around him. Glowing symbols fell from the air like rain. A voice asked if he wanted to virtualize the current situation and return to the initial breakpoint. He stood in the center of the glowing circle, surrounded by shimmering light, and gave his answer in a calm voice. As the bright blue light started feeding him, Li Fan's body became younger and younger. Countless memories floated around him in glowing panels as he slowly descended through the light. He looked at the scenes around him and softly spoke the names of the two cultivators, Do Xuanzi and Ko Hong. Then he raised his hand. His voice was calm as he said that in 50 years he would still be waiting for them in Xuanjing. He ordered Huanjin to restart his life and return to the first year of the breakpoint. The glowing voice answered that it understood. His body dissolved into blue light and fell into a swirling vortex. As he disappeared into the spiral, he made a final vow. He said that riches and honor meant nothing to him. In the next life he would hunt the immortals. After that, he returned to the first anchor year. He became so excited that he behaved strangely, and his aunt almost forced him to drink exorcism water from the village witch. Half a year later, he took the provincial exam. Even though his ranking was low and he placed somewhere in the 30s, he still became a jurong, bringing honor to his family. In anchor year 2, he took the metropolitan exam and passed. He performed very well in the palace exam, earning the second rank and receiving the title of Jinshi. He then used connections in Xuanjing and managed to obtain the position of county magistrate of Wen County in Jiangnan. In anchor year 3, he started building his own trusted inner circle. He later succeeded in producing a batch of explosives and matchlock rifles. In anchor year 5, refugees gathered to rebel against Prince Langya's manor. He led troops to rescue them and saved Prince Langya's family. Prince Langya became very grateful to him. By anchor year 6, he was promoted to the prefect of Zhanghuai Prefecture and married the daughter of the Vice Minister of Rights. In anchor year 7, his wife gave birth to a son. In anchor year 10, Princess Langya also gave birth to a son. He personally went to congratulate her and brought a carefully prepared gift. By anchor year 15, the emperor passed away. Prince Langya inherited the throne and changed the era name to Xuanjing. Emperor Xuanjing summoned him to the capital, promoted him to Vice Minister of War, and ordered him to lead troops to suppress rebellions. In anchor year 18, he defeated the rebel armies. Emperor Xuanjing then took back his military authority, promoted him to Minister of War, and appointed him as the Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince. In anchor year 20, the Empress was suddenly accused of being involved in witchcraft. Emperor Xuanjing became furious and sent her to the cold palace. The Crown Prince quietly asked for his help, and he agreed right away. After a private investigation, he discovered the person who had framed the Empress and cleared her name. But even after learning the truth, Emperor Xuanjing still refused to release the Empress from the cold palace. By anchor year 25, he received secret news that someone had reported him for secretly visiting the Empress in the cold palace. In the same year, Emperor Xuanjing was assassinated while traveling. After his death, officials brought the Empress out of the cold palace. The Crown Prince then took the throne, and the new era was named Kang Ning. By anchor year 26, the Grand Tutor was given even more power. He was also appointed as the Grand Scholar of the Deliberative Council. Reaching the highest position in the court, he used this chance to remove his opponents and form his own faction. By anchor year 30, the people no longer spoke of the emperor, everyone only knew the name of the Grand Tutor. By anchor year 31, the Empress Dowager became pregnant and gave birth to a son. In anchor year 38, Emperor Kangning died from depression. By anchor year 40, the Empress Dowager also died from illness. In anchor year 45, his wife passed away. In anchor year 46, his eldest son died from illness. By anchor year 50, 2 immortals descended from the ruinous abyss and destroyed Xuanjing. He barely escaped with his life. After that, the simulation came to an end. 4 choices appeared before him. 1. Keep one item he had during the simulation. 2. Keep the cultivation level he reached in the simulation. 3. Keep the simulation memories of one person close to him, allowing that person to inherit the memory. 4. Give up all choices to speed up the charging progress. Li Fan stood inside the glowing blue light, surrounded by falling lines of data. He wondered quietly if reality had turned into an illusion, or if everything he saw was only a simulation that felt too real. He thought that maybe, once a person reached a certain level, the difference between truth and illusion no longer mattered. He sighed and said that it was better to check the 4 options first. A glowing screen appeared in front of him, showing the choices he could keep from the simulation. He read through them carefully. The first option let him keep an item he had during the simulation. The second option let him keep the cultivation level he reached inside that life. He thought about it seriously. The first and second choices were easy to understand. If he ever started cultivating in the future, both options would be very useful. But sadly, in that simulated life, he had been just an ordinary mortal, so neither option would help him now. He looked at the screen again, and read the third and fourth options. The third option mentioned giving the simulation memories of someone close to him to that person. He frowned and thought that no one could know what kind of problems that might cause. He then said that stability was the most important thing, so only the fourth option made sense. He continued reading calmly. His ability, Hanzhen, needed to charge up. Whenever he faced a fatal attack, Hanzhen would use that stored charge to protect him automatically. Because of this ability, he had survived many deadly situations in his past life. So he decided that the fourth option was the safest and most stable choice. With that thought, he chose to speed up the charging progress. A glowing screen appeared again, showing his current details. His name was listed as Li Fan. His realm was still mortal. His physical age was 20, but his total lifespan reached 86. His mental age was already 166, out of a maximum of 1056. The virtualization charge progress showed 30%. He looked at the information and thought quietly. Across 3 lives, he had already lived for 166 years in total. He remembered that in his last life, his mental age limit had just passed 900 years, but now it had grown to more than 1,000. He thought about the limits of his mind. When someone carries too many memories, their mental endurance eventually reaches a breaking point. If the burden becomes too heavy, the soul collapses. This was known as the erosion of time. But he also knew that as a person's mental strength grew, their mental age limit would rise as well. Li Fan looked forward with calm determination. As long as he stepped onto the path of cultivation, none of these problems would trouble him anymore. He set his goal clearly. In this life, he wanted to learn the secrets of cultivation from the 2 powerful cultivators he had seen before. He also remembered something important. In 50 years, those 2 would descend upon Xuanjing again. If he prepared early and made up for the weaknesses he had once suffered, he might actually have a chance to win against them. So Li Fan thought for a moment and remembered something the cultivators had mentioned. Maybe besides using guns and explosives, he could rely on that strange, immortal mortal miasma they talked about. But he also knew he could not just sit and wait for 50 years. Suddenly, he remembered those 2 cultivators came from the ruinous abyss in the east. If he wanted to prepare early, he could send people down to the bottom of the abyss to investigate first. He thought about his past life and felt a cold truth. The scariest thing in life was having no goal. Back then, he would often wake up beside the Empress Dowager in the middle of the night, feeling nothing but emptiness and confusion. He had already reached the highest point a mortal could reach. There was no more room to rise, and even if he reincarnated again, it would end the same way. Power, pleasure, and luxury had repeated so many times that they no longer meant anything. Everything felt dull, like chewing tasteless wax. Li Fan realized that if things continued like that, then someday after another reincarnation, he might have chosen to end his own life out of boredom and despair. However, he remembered the moment those 2 cultivators appeared. Their arrival opened a completely new possibility in his life. When he looked at the swirling lights of their battle, it felt as if a strange and tempting new world was calling out to him. He clenched his hand, filled with determination. He wanted to cultivate. He wanted a long life, and he believed nothing could stop him anymore. With a confident smile, he spoke to the air as if declaring a challenge. He said he would meet Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong again in 50 years. With the experience of 2 lifetimes, everything moved smoothly for him, like water flowing toward its destination. He still took part in the imperial exams. This time, with decades of experience and power, the essays he wrote were far better than in his past life. He placed first in the provincial exam, the metropolitan exam, and the palace exam, earning the title of triple first and shaking the world with his reputation. Afterward, he chose to serve as an official in Wen County. Even though the imperial court was confused and regretful about his request, they still approved it. Because of his great fame and his clear understanding of every official's temperament, he easily brought Wen County under control. Then he began promoting and nurturing the trusted subordinates he remembered from his previous life. In the 4th year, he searched in secret, until he found someone who could act as Prince Langya's body double. He trained that person and made him a trusted subordinate. In the 5th year, Li Fan ordered another subordinate to disguise himself as a refugee and attack Prince Langya's manor. He pretended to step in and rescue the prince. But the truth was different. He secretly worked from the inside to kill Prince Langya's entire family, and at the same time, he arranged for the body double to take the prince's place. From that point on, he secretly took control of Prince Langya's manor. In the 9th year, the wedding between Prince Langya and the chief grand scholar's granddaughter went ahead as planned. That night, he entered the bridal chamber himself and spent the night with Princess Langya. In the 10th year, Princess Langya gave birth to a son, who was actually his child. By the 15th year, the emperor had become seriously ill. After receiving the Edict of Succession, he hurried to the capital with his trusted subordinates. After Prince Langya took the throne, he quickly placed his own people throughout the imperial court. With the chief grand scholar secretly assisting him, he easily gained full control of the situation. In the 20th year, after helping his son become emperor, he granted himself the title of Grand Tutor. He stepped out from behind the scenes, and once again stood at the front, holding power over the world. After that, the progress of Great Swan did not slow down. Instead, everything advanced even faster under his guidance and will. In the 35th year, at the Grand Tutor's manor, he asked about the ruinous abyss. He wondered if the fog really disappeared for half a day every 15 years. A hooded subordinate reported to him. He confirmed it was true. The immortal seeking camp had been ordered to stay near the abyss and observe it day and night. A few days ago, they finally made a breakthrough. After the thick fog cleared, a faint light appeared from the bottom of the abyss. They used a telescope to look closely, and discovered an upside-down landscape hidden below. Everyone saw something slightly different, but they all described a vast land filled with countless mountains rising and falling. Hidden among them were grand buildings that could barely be seen through the mist. They also saw huge cities spread across the plains, full of life, with more than 1 million people living there. Some even saw a city floating in the sky, glowing with rosy light. Rare and strange beasts flew all around it. To them it looked truly incredible. Li Fan looked serious as he spoke. He said that the strange things they had seen really did come from the ruinous abyss. He then asked the hooded man if they had found a way to reach the bottom of that abyss. The hooded subordinate lowered his head and admitted his failure. He said they had tried many methods, but whenever they went deep enough, a sudden astral wind tore them apart. He explained that the astral wind was terrifying. Even their strongest armor could not withstand it for even a moment. Li Fan stood by the railing, looking out into the night. His cloak blew softly in the wind as he raised his head toward the sky. The full moon shone brightly above him, surrounded by dark clouds. He stared at it in silence for a moment. Then he spoke calmly, saying that it seemed he would just have to wait for the two of them. In the 50th year, the moon shone brightly over Xuanjing, the capital of the great Xuan nation. The city was peaceful, its rooftops stretching out under the night sky. Then suddenly, two powerful lights clashed in the sky, one blazing like fire and the other glowing with a blue-purple aura. A furious man covered in flames charged forward. He yelled loudly at the calm man facing him, shouting that Dao Xuanzi should not push him too far. As the two men fought in the sky, a rain of fiery attacks suddenly shot toward them from above. Both of them were caught off guard and quickly dodged. Ku Hong, covered in flames, spun around in anger. He raised his arms, forming swirling energy shields around his body to block the falling fire. With a furious expression, he shouted loudly, demanding to know who dared to launch a sneak attack on him.